like to talk. You want to talk?
You're listening to Black Fawn Distro's Takeover Tuesday, the official podcast of Black Fawn Distribution, broadcasting live across the planet and retransmitted on all major streaming platforms. Tonight's program is brought to you in part by Wellington Brewery's Hellas Lager, Deadly Grounds Coffee, Twisted Teas, and of course Canada's #1 genre film company, Black Fawn Distribution. You wanted the best. Well, they didn't make it, so here's what you get.
It's really not that bad.
You are going to hell.
Here's your host, Benner from Black Fawn Distro.
Oh my God. Hello. Hey, we're back. Welcome back to Black Fawn Distro's Takeover Tuesday. This is a special edition, Hotstove from Hell. We haven't done one of these in a while. Of course, my name's Benner, and I'm joined, obviously, as always, to my left, Kells McNells. How you doing tonight, Kells?
Thanks am doing fantastic.
Again.
Thank you for bringing me back again.
No problem. No problem. I know
me.
it's always a struggle. Hey, listen, we've got a very, very special guest tonight, who's Makeup Billy, our friend Makeup Billy, who we haven't had on the program, but friend of the show, but she hasn't been on in a long time. And, of course, we're doing a review and a deep dive and a debate on one of the most talked about films of the year, which is Longlegs, which if people haven't seen it, it's definitely worth checking out. And of course, just it's coming out on 4K and Blu-ray soon. It's already available on digital that you can check it out. And we're going to put the link down below if you're watching on YouTube. And of course, we are broadcasting live tonight. We had a debate about this. We were like, I don't know, we want to do the hot stoves live. Like maybe we'll just do them pre-recorded and put them up and blah, 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 blah. But like we decided to do them live so our audience can get involved. So anybody, if you're tuning in, if you want to get your comments listed, if you want to add something to the conversation, you want to be part of the program, throw your comments down in the comment section below, whether or not it's on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, or Twitter. Although I tried to link up to Twitter, but there's something weird now with X. So I don't think we're actually broadcasting to Twitter, but I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know if that's a big deal. You need a premium account or something, or I don't know. Look, they've changed things. We're not sure, and I don't know if it really matters, but we are broadcasting on YouTube and Facebook and Twitch, and I think those platforms are way better anyway. So now, before we get started, we had a debate about this. We had an internal, what would you call it, a brainstorming session about whether or not we wanted to review newer films and how critical we wanted to be of them, because we love films. We like pointing out what they could have done better, but we also like pointing out what they've accomplished.
What we
definitely want
them.
this. Yeah, exactly. We want it to be a positive show. But you know, there's always problems of every movie, and we feel like we just want to be honest. We're not sponsored by the film. So we're not sponsored by Neon, who produced the film. We don't have free 4K copies in the mail. Our partnership and our sponsorship at the top is really just for our sponsors, who is Wellington Brewery, Deadly Grounds Coffee, and of course, Twisted Teas, longtime partners of ours and longtime sponsors of the program. So thank you so much for your support. So we are not sponsored by the film, which gives us a little bit more of a creative license, a little bit more critical freedom to flexibility. Yes. To kind of analyze films like this. Now we had said, but you know, what about indie films? Like, what about films that are on a modest budget? Like, you know, we're filmmakers ourselves. We represent a lot of filmmakers under the Black Fawn distribution banner. How do we sort of rectify that? And we've come up with what I'm calling, and I hope you're okay with this, Kells, but we're going to call them indie rules. And what we've decided is, like, we're going to not be as critical of films that are under a certain budget level. And we've made that arbitrary call and that arbitrary number to be $20 million on a budget in today's numbers, because I went back and looked at what the budget was for Silence of the Lambs, and in 1991 that was 19 million. So that doesn't qualify because it's not in today's dollars is what we're going for. And this year is 2024. So that's what we're going with. Now, if a film is more than 20 million, I think you have a little bit more, like you said, Kells, critical flexibility to be, I think, a bit more critical. Because I think once you have that budget, if you're making a film for 50 million, 80 million, $100 million, I feel like you have all of the resources available to you to make a great script, a great product, a great film, a great final piece of cinema. And I think that you should get held to a slightly higher level of accountability. But
making greatness, baby.
That's right. And we figured, hey, listen, we looked back and looked at a couple of films that were kind of made around that $20 million budget. So Conjuring, that was a film that kind of popped up. And I feel that that's kind of where that threshold needs to be, subject to change based on which way the wind is blowing, I guess. But we will try and keep things consistent for our viewership out there. And of course, thank you to the viewers out there who are tuning in. If you're returning to the channel, we really definitely appreciate it. If you're catching us on one of the other platforms, thank you as well. Any platform that we're broadcasting to tonight, please leave your comments in this comment section below. And if you are watching on YouTube, if you can go down and hit that subscribe button, subscribe to the channel. We've got a whole bunch of content coming out as well under Streams and Screams, which is Kells's proprietary show on YouTube, which is she reviews what to check out on streaming platforms. I do, of course, my infinitely creatively named review show, Banner's Movie Reviews, and of course we do our 90s Night and our interview series on Takeover Tuesday. And of course, that includes this show, which is our Takeover Tuesday Hotstove from Hell, which, as I mentioned, we talk about a film. And I think what we're going to do from now on, because here's the other thing too, right? We were getting into a groove where we were like, it'd be really cool if we reviewed the Saw like franchise. And we were like, that's like 10 films. So like, who's going to watch those 10 films? Now I've watched all 10 films. You've watched all 10 films. Everyone that we're having on the panel has watched the 10 films, but how recently? I don't know. It's a lot to ask. And especially now that everyone's got other projects going on, other responsibilities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's really hard to squeeze all that stuff in. And I think it's just for me. I think everybody else has no problem doing it, but I am very busy now and it's tricky. And I just want to bring a full review sesh to the program. So what we decided is we decided to review films that are out there, films that are being talked about, films that are sort of in the general zeitgeist, I guess. We want to talk about films that are top of mind that people are really gravitating towards and that are really well reviewed or really divisive films. And that's kind of what we're pivoting towards within the horror and scary movie thriller genre space. So we picked Longlegs because we felt, hey, lots of people have watched this movie. Yes. It's one of the most talked about films of the year. And so we've decided to make the Hotstove from Hell's kind of about these films. So anyway,
that said,
yes,
discussing Longlegs.
Christ sakes, waiting for you to jump in.
Waiting for you to breathe.
I just wanted to get it out there because we're trying to do this like quick, right?
Yes, we're trying to punch through. So that said, spoilers will be abound. So if you have not seen Longlegs, if you care about spoilers, maybe come back to this after you've had a chance to check it out. But if you have seen Longlegs, or if you're like, you know what, go ahead, spoil me, baby, I don't care, then hang tight. We are going to get into the meat and potatoes of this film because there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on in this movie, a lot of discussion points, and we are obviously very excited about it because we're here. So let's crack it. Let's do it.
And we've got some people already tuning in right now. We've got the Rogue Toad. What a great name. Galloway, we're live, baby. That's right. And of course, buddy, friend of the show, Scotty Wakefield. What's up? What's up, Scotty? Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. And of course, let's jump into getting our guest on board here. Now, do you want to do the rundown first, or should we get the guest in here? Should we fill up the panel?
Let's do the world's fastest rundown of like the stats of the film. That we're going to bring in Billy because I don't want her to wait and I want to talk to her because she's so excited and I'm so excited to see her. So let's do the world's fastest rundown and then we'll bring her right in.
Okay, I'm doing the rundown.
You have the information.
All right, here we go. So Longlegs was released earlier this year. Of course, stars Maika Monroe. Nicolas Cage and Blair Underwood.
Yes.
It's 86% on Rotten Tomatoes. It has over 290 reviews right now, I believe. I think that will probably climb up a little bit with the release in home video, coming out on Blu-ray and DVD, and I believe 4K shortly, and it is already available on digital and VOD. The link will be linked below. You can actually rent it on YouTube as well. So if you are watching on YouTube, check it out. Check out the stuff down below. And of course, we've got our online store down there too. Check out the Black Fawn Distribution online store while you're at it. Now, box office success. This movie, really know what the budget is, which is kind of funny.
I think it's less than 10 million.
We said less than 10 million.
I heard
as low as 3 or 4 million, depending, but let's go with less than 10. Let's say it's 8 or 9. I think that's probably fair.
3 or 4 is less than 10.
That's correct. You know what? Kells, that's why we have you here, just to keep me honest about
just
that
to keep
stuff.
the facts.
So, massive box office success, $73 million domestically, $28 million internationally, for a total of $101 million at total box office. That's up till today. I believe it's still making money on the weekends, which is great, but over $100 million from Neon, which is the studio that put it out. Fantastically unbelievable success, and and critically acclaimed. I mean, that's all you want in a movie. Of course, great, fantastic viral marketing campaign that they did for this film, and
which we'll get into.
As usual, on 90s night, we usually have a drink, and we don't usually do these in hot stoves, but you were like, oh, I got an idea. So, like, what do you got over there?
So I got a little excited with this idea. It's nothing special, but I wanted to make a little fancy birthday drink for the almost birthday girl. Almost birthday girl is what this drink is called. So it's got some orange crush, because it made me think of like children's birthday parties, and also this little like crushy kind of thing. Cherry liqueur, again, very fun and fancy free, and gin, because I feel like Lee Harker is a gin girl. That just makes sense to me, and I wanted to combine those things in a flavorful beverage, and I did, and it's delicious. So there we go.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well, without further ado, let's jump into Longlegs, and let's bring in our guest tonight. I'm really pumped to have this person who's really near and dear to my heart back on the show. And what's amazing is that about 6 months ago, I was like, yeah, you met Vic, right? Like, Makeup Billy, right? And you were like, no, I've we've never chatted. And I was like, what are you talking about? Yes, you have. And you're like, no, I would have known, I would have remembered. And I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to get you guys in the same room, because like I know you guys would gel. You kind of both like the same stuff, same films and that sort of stuff. So it's just so awesome to have two of my friends in one spot. So we figured, hey, if we do Longlegs, why don't we do that live on the air as part of Hotstove from Hell? So that's what we're doing tonight. And of course, now she is a mask maker extraordinaire. She's also a horror film, I'm going to say guru, because she reviews everything. Check her out on her own YouTube channel at Makeup Billy. You can check that out on YouTube, and I'll link it down below. And of course, hit her up on Instagram at Makeup Billy. We'll throw the information down in the scroll below. And I can't imagine a better person to talk to about this film. And also, it's just so great to see her. I'm going to bring her into the studio right now. Of course, Makeup Billy. Yo, what's going on?
Oh, I'm so stoked you guys had me on for this. This is going to be great.
I brought up the lasers for you.
How come I can't do that?
Because Kells has like the technology from the future, and she only has the ability to do things on her computer, and none of the other people. That's how she keeps everyone in their place.
I love it.
Now, listen, I know what you're thinking. Like, what a messy backdrop, right? Like, what's going on with that backdrop, man?
Yeah.
Like seriously. But I got a surprise for you. Like, check it out. Boom, Hotstove from Hell. Bam, over there. And of course, if you're wondering what that sounds like, it sounds like that.
Which is either rain or I think it's
listen, everyone said it will sound. Yeah, I thought it's
supposed to be
it's supposed to be barbecue. It's supposed to be barbecue sizzle.
You know I love meat.
Barbecue. It's supposed to be barbecue sizzle, okay?
Okay, fine.
Anyway,
we're here for
whatever.
it.
Here we go. So listen, again, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit up Vic's links as well. Follow her online. She's got a ton of stuff. What are you working on right now? Before we get going on this film, like tell our audience a little bit about yourself and hey, what are you getting up to?
I've literally been going a bit bananas because we're doing Frightmare in the Falls. That's the one horror convention I'm doing this year. So basically just trying to get some new stuff done. My zombie mask from literally I'm decked out in zombie. But that's one of my newest ones that I molded up recently. So I'm just trying to get my first two kind of down pat. And I got that Mr. Barlow in the back. I got two of these guys coming along.
Nice.
Always
Very
terrified me. Yeah. Yeah. And I got some new concepts coming up. I've been even debating. I'm like, do I make a scarecrow? Guys, I've never made a scarecrow. It's about time, right?
Sure, yeah, why not, man? What have you
No
been
better
waiting
time.
for?
And nobody's made a good horror scarecrow movie. Anyways, that's another day. But yeah.
That's a project in the making is what that is.
Right?
I love that you're broadcasting live from the workshop. I love it. It's amazing. And hey, listen, thanks for doing this too. I know we've been talking about doing something like this for a while, and with all the other shows kind of going on, we've trying to streamline everything, and I think we've finally almost got it down, right, Kells? Pretty sure. So
We're
jumping back
there.
into we're getting there at least. Maybe if I didn't talk so much, we'd get more shows done.
I need to find one of the signs that'll just be your cue to chill. I gotta find one. I don't know what it's gonna be.
Maybe it's the sizzle. Yeah, or maybe it's just the sizzle sound effect. Just rub your tongue at the same time.
Seinfeld, baby. Ooh.
All right. Listen, I gotta say, I'm feeling a little out of place because my headphones are so boring on tonight's program. But also, hey, listen, shout out, nice toque. Love it. Thanks for wearing it.
Right?
And of course, you can buy our new 90s Night toques in the Black Fawn Distro online store, the new online store hosted through Shopify. And check it out in the link below. But give it a look. Give us a subscribe. Now let's get into it. That's what everyone's been talking about. Everyone's been waiting for. Longlegs. I love this movie. I have some thoughts on it for sure, but overall, I think it's such a great quality made movie. I think it deserved a lot of the hype that kind of came around it, but I was lucky enough to catch it in the theater, and I really felt it was sort of a throwback film to kind of like those 90s thrillers. It's really dark, great atmosphere, and I just I gotta say, it's been a while since sort of an indie film sort of came out of nowhere and sort of dropped in theaters where everybody was kind of going to see it. I don't think it's a runaway success, but it's definitely, I mean, once you hit 100 million at the box office, I mean, you're doing all right. Your thoughts, Kells or Vic, jump in.
Yeah.
What'd you think?
I think it's definitely a high-speed success, if not a runaway success, because this film I think it made 10 million in its opening weekend, so it made back its almost or less than budget very, very quickly, which is absolutely incredible. And of course, Osgood Perkins, who I know mostly from The Black Coat's Daughter. You also may know mostly from his impressive lineage. He is son of Anthony Perkins, who played Norman Bates in Psycho, and Barry Berenson as the fantastic actress and model. So he kind of has a really great background to kind of get into film. And I imagine it was a kind of a big thing for him. But this film, I was kind of listening to an interview. He was talking about how this movie is really about his relationship with his parents. Protective lies and certain truths that are curated as a move to sustain the family and keep them together, and how he really wanted to make a film to kind of honor his parents because they both passed away. Anthony Perkins died of pneumonia as a complication of AIDS in 1992, and Barry Berenson actually died in 9/11. She was a passenger on Flight 11. So this was kind of a movie to honor him or honor them, and it's basically sums up, it's about as bad a day as a person can have at the end of this film. It's about getting Lee to this place where she's just that's it. The devil's won. Everything's kind of big chef's kiss. So there's a lot I want to talk about with this movie, because it's just about a devil having fun doing his tricks and doing some spooky stuff, which is always awesome to see. But I want to know what Vicky thinks about it, because I'm so excited to have you here.
Yeah, honestly, I'm interested to hear about this too. So yeah, the floor is yours. What do you think?
Honestly, I was so happy to have caught this in theaters because, again, I live in the boonies. So to be able to even find a theater, it was an hour and a half away. Kind of show up, guys. There's literally 5 rows of seats. I'm this is perfect for this movie, right? Anyways, there was maybe 8 people in there, including us. Wow. And it was such a good vibe. Like, I was really happy to have seen this in theaters. I think the music was epic. Like, the sound design in it was fantastic. Nicolas Cage freaking rocked it. And like, I'm not going to get too deep into this because I'm sure we're going to get into it. I do think there was a lot of story holes here and there. I do. But overall, it was one of those movies that I walked out of and I was like, nice. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was happy. You know, like that. This is what I want back in new horror. Like, we need more of this.
Yeah.
I think something that sorry, Kells, go ahead.
I was gonna say the fun kind of thing with the sound design, because I agree the sound design is so fascinating. And a part of that is that a lot of the sound in the film is actually played in reverse. Because it kind of is kind of in honor of like the satanic panic, and when you would hear about like playing music backwards and getting subliminal messages put in through movies. So they played around with that idea a lot, and they played around with the concept of like having subliminal messages played backwards. Apparently, I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard that one of the subliminal messages is you will rate Longlegs very high on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that. I don't know if that's true or not. 86%. I kind of hope it is.
They would.
And then, yep. It worked. And then other things, just, sort of creepy, satanic type of verbiage that they stuck in reverse. And I think it makes for such an unnerving atmosphere because a lot of the sound effects played in reverse, it feels jarring. Like you don't know why, because it's just so subtle, but it just makes you feel very ill at ease that whole time. And I thought that was such a cool effect to make it really pop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know what? It's one of the things that we always talk about, especially on, on other programs like 90s Night in particular, right? Kells is like, not knowing where a movie's going to go. And I think like we live in this time where seeing an original movie, and it's probably one of the reasons it connected with audiences, or at least got audiences interested enough to buy a ticket and put, butts in seats. That's what it's all about, right? And we'll get to the marketing in a bit, but I feel like the overall thing was like halfway through this movie, I had no idea where it was going to go.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, this feels like this feels like that. I couldn't stop thinking about it after the fact. And yes, there are some plot holes we'll get to. Maybe they aren't plot holes. We don't know, because I'd love to go back and watch this movie a second time, a third time, a fourth time, just to kind of piece things together. I also love, I couldn't help but like think about, Maika Monroe is awesome in this film, of course, as well as Nicolas Cage, as well as Blair Underwood, who, Blair Underwood's like a working actor too. Like he's in a ton of stuff, but he was also in a movie way back in the 90s called Just Cause, which is a fantastic thriller. If you haven't seen that movie, check it out. It's amazing. I had the sense where I was like, I like the vibe of this. It's weird. I'm interested in the character. I'm interested to see what her backstory is. I'm interested to see how she's going to solve this case. And, I don't know. I feel like I'm excited now when I go to the movies and watch a film like that, because I'm so sort of on the edge of my seat. Like Kells, like you just said, it did feel unsettling. Like you didn't know, you felt like it was almost like a wobbly vinyl or something, right? Like it was like kind of like you're just off balance a bit, where you're like, I don't really like this, but I definitely want to see what's up. Fantastic film overall. I gave it like 4 out of 5 when I came out of the theater, and I think that's stuck. I think it's missing a couple components, I think, that would raise that rating for me. But all said and done, like, I mean, I feel like pretty good success as far as setting out to accomplish probably what it set out to do in the first place, right?
Yeah, this is one of those films that the more I sit with it, the more I kind of digest it, the more I like it. Because again, the points we'll get into at first, when I first saw the film, I was like, well, what about and I kind of had a hard time working those ideas out. But the more that I sit with it, the more I kind of, again, it's that feeling of like you miss a step and you're just sort of like lose gravity for like a half a second. And it's that unexpected kind of fall. And I think this movie really kind of captured that and just stretched it out for like 2 hours, which is really cool.
So let's dive into some of these finer points. These elusive finer, like the finer details, if you will. Vic, let's throw it to you. Like, is there something like you steer this panel a little bit?
There were no long legs. Okay, number one, I was convinced there was going to be something about some person with just freakishly long. Yeah, but like, again, like you do, like they do portray him as a tall man. You know what I mean? Like you do have these scenes where he does seem very in that power position with these long legs, as he says too. But I don't know. There was so many moments where I was expecting, I guess, just like almost like a creature-y thing to come out, but it was absolutely not that. Kind of like you were saying, man. What's next? Like, where's
Well, I was
going?
okay. I was hoping it. Okay, I didn't want it to be a spider though, because
No.
I just thought of
Mm.
like Daddy Longlegs, right? And I
Mhm.
was
Right.
like, one, Daddy Longlegs, the least threatening spider, just for the record, and also as well, like I feel like every interpretation of a spider on the screen, like if it's big, it's like not scary. Like if it's small and can get in your ear or something, terrifying. But like if it's like a big lumbering spider guy, like it's like like I don't know, I just shoot that guy, you know. So I really felt like I was glad that it didn't do that. It was more metaphorical, and I thought like it was
Mhm.
more like how I interpreted it was like it was the reach of something. So like, you know, if you look at
Yeah.
a Daddy Longlegs, it's like a little tiny body and these long legs. And I
Mm.
just felt like it was sort of like it was sort of like a metaphor for like the evil that's happening in here, and that's like the devil's reach into kind of all
Yeah.
of these lives. That's kind of
Mhm.
how I interpreted it. But you're right, Vicky. Nicolas Cage was a man with long legs
He
too.
had some
So
Yes.
long legs.
I
yeah,
did find, I don't know how true this is, but apparently Longlegs is actually an homage to an old nursery rhyme called Goosey Goosey Gander, um, which was an alternate version of the nursery rhyme is known as Old Father Longlegs. So I don't know, look up Old Father Longlegs
okay.
and see if you can find some more information about that. I don't know how accurate that is, but that's what I'm reading right now, and it's very curious. So
That's
I
even
I didn't have that.
creepier.
I didn't have that at my fingertips in the movie theater. So I was just going by.
Oh.
I
It wasn't
loved
like,
how
wait a minute, I know this nursery rhyme.
so of course like Nicolas Cage is like one of the reasons to see this. The acting is
Mhm.
one of the reasons to see this film. I think it's
Mhm.
very well set up. I think everyone kind of plays their role very well, and I think all the actors are interesting. But let's dive into kind of like what we liked about this film, other than like for me, I think one of the most interesting things nowadays is how low budget films are able to set things very, very easily in the 90s. And I think it's kind of like it's a bit of a cheat, but I don't mind it and I respect it, right? Because I feel like in the film, like that doesn't really tell you when the movie takes place, but you know that there's a picture of Bill Clinton on the wall and there's some oversized computer monitors. It's the 90s, baby. So right. So like
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, it's very easy to do that rather than trying to set this in the 60s or something like that. I
Mhm.
thought it was a curious choice. And I don't know if there's any reasoning behind that other than the budget, perhaps. But I feel like movies that do that age really well too. They kind of sit in that sort of like time bubble where they don't really age past when they come out. So I'm wondering if that's one of the things that kind of helped the film sort of create this sort of air of mystery and suspense and like, you know, overarching like dread, I think, throughout the
Yeah.
film. Like I always felt the sense of like things were going to happen, like with not knowing. And sometimes I love in movies as well nowadays where they kind of create this sense of dread and it's not a jump scare and then
Yeah.
nothing happens and you're just like you have this
You're like,
anxiety
"Ah."
that it doesn't just stops and then it builds up
Yeah.
again. I feel like that's really, really consistently well done in this film.
Yeah. I think
Mhm.
with the 90s thing too as well, like you think about films in the 90s that were set in the 60s and 70s because it was about 30 years ago, and I feel old because about 30 years ago we were looking at the 90s. So it kind of makes sense to set that kind of period film in that early period that we used to just look further back at. And I think another useful thing is like there's no cell phones, there's no ability to just like, oh, let me just text this guy and tell him not to let this lady in his house. Like there's a rushing sense, there's a not knowing what to do, how to get there, how to communicate things, because they don't have the technology yet, and that makes things a lot more complicated and a lot easier, I think, maybe for filmmaking, because you don't have to dance around the logic of just pick up a phone.
And also as well, like when the service doesn't work, it's like
Yeah.
it's more believable. Now, like I go into Toronto sometimes, and there's a spot like on the like I take the GO train into Toronto, and like there's a spot where there's still no cell service, so it does still happen.
Mm.
But in the 90s, it's like
Easier.
God forbid anything happened on that train between
Right.
these two
Yeah.
towns. I'm not going to tell you which ones because someone weird's going to get on it. But I'm not like I'm like, man, anything could happen on this train right now. Nobody would know about it.
Yeah.
But but yeah, I think you know, I think it's easier to kind of explain that stuff away and create a little bit more, I don't know, just some more believable situations where people are in where they don't have a phone or don't have a phone that works, and
distance.
yeah. So
It's
okay,
also it's more interesting too to see on screen, right? Like, let's be real, when you're not always seeing like these little text blurbs, a lot of the newer ones, it gets like exhausting. So I wonder if they kind of, and on top of it, like Helter Skelter and all that stuff was the 70s anyways, right? So it kind of makes sense time-wise to kind of drip into the 90s.
Well, also the Satanic Panic was a huge thing in the 90s, especially around this time period. Like I mentioned earlier, the subliminal messages of like, oh, if you play this album backwards, it has satanic messages. The Satanic Panic was a huge thing in the 90s, and it kind of was focusing on this belief that like kids were getting abducted for satanic rituals, and like kids had repressed memories, and you had to talk to the kids and pull these repressed memories out of the kids, and it caused a lot of like false memory syndrome and a lot of issues that kind of escalated in a huge and particularly uncomfortable way. The McMartin preschool trials is super interesting to read about as an example of that. But I think that it also kind of works for this because it's that idea of like that satanic overtone, that won't somebody please think of the children. It has that vibe that kind of fits so well within that Satanic Panic era. But and also again, just visually, it's kind of fun to watch back and be like, I remember those pants. You know?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that stuff too, it's funny too, because I feel like sometimes decades, like they kind of bleed over into one another. So like, I feel like the early 90s, like the very early 90s has a lot left over from the 80s, which was a big thing. Like, there's a great commercial or like there's like a public service announcement on YouTube. I'll try and find it, maybe link it down below. It's hilarious. It's about whether or not your son or daughter might be into Satanism, and it's like, go through their stuff and see if there's like pot and like a large dagger, like it's like heavy, a lot of heavy metal posters on the wall and stuff. It's really hilarious. And that was obviously like
clutching.
That was like really prevalent in the 80s. And the Judas Priest there's a very famous court case where someone I think they killed themselves. And unfortunately, but the parents blamed it on listening to Judas Priest. And of course, the case was thrown out eventually because there was no evidence of it, right? But it was kind of based on the fact that there could be subliminal messages in their music and et cetera, et cetera. But of course, all that turned out to be, hooey. So for lack of a better word. So it was interesting to see kind of them carry that sort of, I felt it was pretty ingrained into the movie too. And I just love the fact that it was very aesthetically played into like the religious components of this sort of this world, without being without being too overbearing too. Like it felt like obviously you were most connected to Maika Monroe in this film, obviously, who played Agent Harker. And she is very much like she's non-religious. She's very either atheist or agnostic throughout the film. It's never really, I don't think, declared, to the best of my recollection. It's not really declared where she sees herself, but she definitely doesn't say her prayers. She looks at her mom as being like a little bit kooky. But so I just feel that kind of like connects a lot of people to the film, thinking like, oh, well, whatever. So when the payoff comes and like the evil is revealed, it makes it a little bit more scary, I think, because she doesn't really like, I'm reminded of this scene where she goes into the barn. And I was like, don't go in that barn, man. Like, I was like, I wouldn't go in there right now. Like, I'm too chicken shit. Right. So, but she doesn't care about that stuff. She's like, let's just go in and find, obviously we're just trying to find clues and stuff. So I thought it was a really good setup for what they wanted to do with the plot.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious to talk a little bit about, Vicky, you kind of mentioned earlier, some sort of things within the plot that or maybe little hiccups and stuff. I'm kind of curious to see like what
let's get into it.
Kind of caught up at
Ooh, okay.
I felt like you wanted to talk about that right away. I thought you were going to come up and be like, yo, listen, let's go talk about that plot, man.
Well, because I find it so interesting, right? Because like you said, like part of watching movies, I find I always sit there and I'm like, where is this going? And this movie literally takes you, I feel, on 3 different films. Like this could have been 3 different things. There's this whole aspect that he's a doll maker.
Yeah.
And they don't even tap too much into it. And I'm like, dolls are so scary. Like Nicolas Cage, Castor Troy making child dolls.
Yeah, that could be a whole movie by itself.
Hold on, right?
Yeah.
Right? like a whole other thing. And then sticking these weird metal balls in their brain. I'm like, come on. Like, what's happening here? Is it aliens at this point? Like, you know what I mean? Like, this movie took me on so many trips. And then again, the whole Satanism aspect,
Mm-hmm.
or like just child predator slash like random acts of violence vibes. So this movie, I feel like it just kind of hop, skipped, and jumped. Whew.
I was,
Yeah.
I agree. Like I was trying to figure out, like what was maybe real and what was not real. Like
Mm-hmm.
from a character perspective, right? And whether or not it was sort of all in someone's head or not. And I was like, I don't know which way I want this to go. Like, you know, when you're watching a movie and you're like, oh, I really don't know which way I want this to go. Like I want something to surprise me, but I
Mhm.
also want it to make sense. You
Yeah.
know, because I feel like the obvious choice is this, but I don't want it to be the obvious choice because even though it would make the most sense, I feel like I would have guessed it. But I don't know. I always find myself sort of on the fence with that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I think it was odd, but sometimes in a good way. I mean, I have watched a couple things online since where the shadow is like the
Yeah.
devil is in a lot more scenes than
10
you think.
shots. Yeah. There's like
And
apparently 10 shots he's in the background, like subliminally you can't really see him, but he's there.
in some films,
Oh.
like some movie theaters are like sometimes they don't replace their like their bulbs as much as they need to in the projectors. So some films will look a little darker than they
Mhm, mhm.
should. And it's sometimes hard to tell. So there's definitely 2 or 3 scenes. Obviously, when the shadow is at the window, when Nicolas Cage is in the basement, like there's obviously times where you're like, oh yeah, that's obviously the devil or some dark entity or whatever. But
Mhm.
there's other scenes where I didn't actually realize that it was in the room, and
Mhm.
apparently it is. So I thought that was really really well done, and I'd love to watch that again just to see if I could pick up on all those. But
Mhm.
I
Little
also
Easter
felt,
eggs.
Yeah.
yeah, but the only thing, like I thought the scene where so when Harker's in her house,
Mhm.
and she gets the note, the letter, or no, sorry, just before she goes out, she sees somebody outside who was obviously supposed to be Nicolas Cage. And then she goes outside and then she sees him walking around in her house and stuff. And
So
so
creepy.
from that,
Terrifying. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
like, and it's so well done where it was like, and that's a great example of just like the tension's kind of relieved. And then they're like, oh, whoa, look at that guy. Like,
Mhm.
like, and I also love like movies where like you see a shot and like you have to scan, like you have to actively scan the whole
Every corner.
frame because you're like, I know something's there and I know I'm not
Yeah.
paying it. Something's going to move.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they did that a couple times. And but again, I was like, oh, well, is he just a serial killer or is there something more nefarious going on? So I feel like a secondary watch would kind of maybe bring those a few things around. I don't know, just a bit more
Yeah.
clarity, I think. I don't know. I'm not sure. Because I did feel like I'm with you, Vic. Like I felt like it was like it still felt cohesive though. It didn't feel like it was 2 movies jammed together or anything. But it did feel
Mhm.
like it was like at a couple of times I feel like there was a lot going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a bit of a mystery ride that way because like you're taken in a couple different directions and ultimately like you're all leading to the same place. There's a couple little things that I was like, wait a minute. Like the one of the early scenes with Harker when she says, oh, you know, he's in that house, and they have that very amazing Silence of the Lambs-esque, which is great that they do that early on in the film too, that they have that great like little tip of the hat to the basement scene in Silence of the Lambs when she's going around trying to find Buffalo Bill. But they do it right out the gate in daylight. So it's even creepy. I
Mhm.
love it. But they're able to kind of have that homage tie to it, get it out of the way early so people aren't waiting for that comparison later on. But it also, like, I felt like that was somewhere I wanted to kind of see more come out of that little subplot point with the abilities. I kind of like that they didn't, because at first when that came up, I was like, oh, that kind of feels a little easy. I don't know. Like I felt like it was like
Mhm.
almost a little bit of cop out at a certain point. Pardon the pun, but at the same time, like I think it was a really kind of cool thing to introduce, and then just be like, it doesn't matter. Like, don't worry about it. Don't even think about it. It doesn't matter, because when you think about it, a lot of the times in life, as it were, these things happen. Something will come up that you may think is very significant and you never hear about it or see it again in your life. Or something may come up that you don't ever think about and it turns out to be very, very significant. And there's a guy that's been living in your basement this whole time. And I don't know why you never went down in your basement, but he apparently was in your basement the
You
whole
weren't
time.
allowed, man. That's why
Yeah.
the basement's scary. Nobody wants to go in the basement. Whenever your parents are like, "Just go down to the basement, get me an extra light bulb or something, something from the
Yeah.
freezer." And I'm like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I was-
know.
I was-
You go down there, you get it, and then you run up
You
as
never
fast
look
as you
back.
can. You don't look around.
Oh, I was totally the creeper that hung out in the unfinished basement, which is like, what's in this hole here? Like, I was totally
Oh
that
my
kid.
God. Well, you would have found Nicolas Cage apparently. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't look hard enough, I guess. I don't know. But speaking on Nicolas Cage, one thing that I thought was really, really amazing about his performance is, and Osgood Perkins was talking about this in an interview, that he's such a consummate professional. He knows exactly where to go and when to go there. So Osgood was on the set one day and the sound guy came up to him and he's like, I've never seen anything like it. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, Nicolas Cage, like when he's quiet and he's whispering and he's pulling his performance inward, he gets, if you get with audio, if you go too far under the line, it's unusable and you can't hear it, you can't use it. And if you go too far over the line, if you go too big, it just gets muddled and you can't use it. But whether he's going so quiet, pulling back his performance, or whether he's going completely bananas all over the side of the place, he never crosses that line. He knows exactly where to stop his performance so that it's still usable, which is just speaks to like what a consummate professional he is. I think that he's been doing this for like 40 something years and he's been able to master that chaotic performance in a way that it's still always usable. And I think that's so freaking cool about him.
Oh, I love him so much. The bees. Let's be real. He screamed in so many movies.
Funny, yeah,
so
funny
many.
side,
Oh
funny
my
side
gosh. He
story.
learned. He had to learn.
Yeah.
So funny side story, and I'm gonna try and set Vic. I think you know about this, but like, so we were all at or me and Vic were at Ottawa Comic Con. We had booths side by side, and we were bored. Like it was just a slow day, and we were bored, and we came up with the idea of like, what if we had this like action figure series, but it was like a really awesome action figure series with like different characters of different actors, and every line would be, and we had like this Nicolas Cage line, which it was like Castor Troy, Con Air with a toy
hair and
like,
the bunny.
Hair with a bunny and like a hair dryer.
Cape Fear De Niro with a thumb.
Yeah. And then we had the bees, like from Wicker Man. But it's weird, like it's like Nicolas Cage has had this crazy career, and he's done sort of all kinds of things, and now he's sort of kind of edging back into sort of doing like these sort of oddball films, but that have a little bit more pedigree to them. Like I remember watching Willy's Wonderland, and I was like, I don't know. I just don't know if I'm feeling this movie. But movies like this, I think, are just very, very well positioned for him, especially now that he's a little bit older. And like you were saying, Kells, to bring that sort of dynamic, sort of off the wall performance that really kind of suits the film that he's in. And because he's like, let's be honest, he's made a living off that for decades now, and he's all over the internet because of it as well. But I really do think that he gets involved with these projects because he really does believe in them, which I think is a credit to him as an actor. And I also feel like with this film as well, like, and maybe we can jump into the marketing here, because for the longest time I had no idea that he was in this film until I think the weekend it came out, when the reviews started coming out where they were like an unadvertised Nicolas Cage, and I was like, wait, what? Like, I mean, how did this get by me on the interweb? Like, and I was like, Nicolas Cage, as a killer, or like in a movie called Longlegs, and then I needed to see it. And I'm not sure, Kells, I don't know if you found anything about why they did that, but obviously I think it was probably just to not to overshadow the rest of the film, but
so Oz Perkins, it was his request to not use Nicolas Cage in any of the marketing, because it was a creative plan to like promote and sell the movie without depending on Nicolas Cage, which makes sense to me. It's he wanted it to kind of stand on its own legs before everyone was like, oh my god, this is going to be another crazy Nicolas Cage
legs.
Legs.
But Sorry.
I walked into that one. Leg puns. But I think that oh my gosh, I forgot what I was saying. Yes, not
Sorry,
depending on
Kells.
Nicolas Cage, because it's such a different kind of movie that if everyone went in saying like, oh, this is going to be Nicolas Cage playing a crazy serial killer, this is going to be bananas, expectations would be vastly different from what the film actually is. So I feel like not having that in the marketing, not depending on Nicolas Cage for the success of the film and not misleading audiences with expectations of a different film, I think that was really, really smart. And they did the billboard, of course, where they had that billboard put up around a couple different places that just had a phone number. And if you called the phone number, it was an audio recording of Nicolas Cage as Longlegs singing like that creepy song that he sings with like the happy birthday.
Yeah.
Oh, just wonderful viral marketing, living for it. Absolutely adore that. But again, they did that before it was kind of revealed that Nicolas Cage was even in the movies. You're just hearing this creepy voice. You're like, oh my God, what and who is this?
And he was on the poster, like it was his eyes on the poster.
But you don't recognize him at all.
Nobody really knew.
He had a good makeup job on,
Absolutely.
makeup job on him. Yeah. He almost looked like a botched up Cher, is what I kept thinking. Like it was a wild kind of poofy and I don't know.
Yes, or like a Liberace that just had like a little too much and then it started drooping at the same time. Yeah. Like that kind of, and the hair too kind of added to that, I think. Yeah. But yeah, it just had this look of like someone that is just kind of like melting a little bit. And I thought that was really, really creepy and really delightful.
Did you guys, I was going to say, did you guys hear about it? I've heard this somewhere online where Nicolas Cage was like, I don't think I can ever be another villain after doing this movie.
Yeah, he said that he doesn't want to do another serial killer because he's like, I've done it and like I don't want to play somebody that hurts people. Yeah. And he did this movie as like a tribute to his mother. Both him and Oz Perkins, they did this as a tribute to their moms. And I think that was kind of a selling point for the film for Nicolas Cage, was understanding the kind of intent behind the film and also just reading the script, because like the script is so interesting. Like I can't imagine like getting this on your doorstep and being like, oh, okay then. So
yeah, that's a good point.
So yeah, so I think that this is kind of the perfect thing to fall into Nick Cage's lap, because I can't imagine anyone else doing that character.
That's a good question. Who would you place there?
Yeah, I could think of a couple people, but yeah, I think it's more interesting that it's Nicolas Cage.
Yes, because I think part of the fascination with it too is that it is Nicolas Cage and he's so unrecognizable, but he's also so like quintessentially Cage in his performance, while also just allowing that unhinged nature to sneak out a little bit, which he does so well. Like we were saying, like he plays those characters so well, and he knows where to go to the line to stop at the line and where to go to the other side of the line to stop at the line. So I think it was really cool. But his whole look, like Maika Monroe was not able to see him at all until their interrogation scene, which was Nicolas Cage's last day on set. And so she had never seen him at all until they shot that scene. Wow. And she's wearing a microphone on her shirt. And apparently, when she was having this conversation with Nick Cage, her heartbeat, her initial heart rate was 76 beats per minute. When the scene ended, it was 170 beats per minute. And you can hear through the microphone, and they use some of that audio in the trailer, which is really cool. They like picked out her heartbeat and used some of that in the marketing, which is really nifty.
I love, like, obviously Maika Monroe was in It Follows, another film that was like super low budget that had such a great premise and did mind-numbing box office numbers as well. Awesome to see that movie get a sequel. And we'll talk about this movie potentially maybe having a second part as well at near the end of this broadcast. I feel like the one scene that I knew I was getting, I feel like, and Kells, we've talked about this on 90s Night a lot of the time, or a few times too, is that just, you got to wait till you get to the monster, right? Like the monster isn't right out of the gate. And, just kind of like, I felt like the scene where he goes into the hardware store, I thought was brilliant, because I've worked a lot of customer service jobs when I was younger, and like you do always see some guy roll in, and you might like,
and you're like
what's that guy up to back there? And then you're like, whatever, who cares? And then like usually it's not Nicolas Cage from Longlegs, right?
Yeah.
it's just some guy, but like you might not catch them. You catch them out of the corner of your eye. You don't really see them come in. And I just thought it was like a really cool way to sort of express the fact that, okay, here's this guy, it's Nicolas Cage, but you don't really see him like when he's doing like over the eye thing, and you can't really see his face is still covered.
Yeah.
And he's kind of weird and he's creepy. And then that cuts to the car scene, and I was just like, oh my God, this is going to be awesome. Like, at least I'm so invested, because I feel like the way they set it up in this film is that you really do get invested with Harker right off the bat. She seems very interesting. And again, I think how they set her up, like, is that she is like, there's a lot of has been made. I read some reviews online too, saying like, for reasons that are maybe disclosed in the movie as the plot goes forward, but like she seems to be maybe on the spectrum a little bit. And she's very quiet, and she's very secluded, and very likes to be alone. She has a fractured relationship with her mother already. That's that type of thing. And then foiling that in mirroring or positioning that with Nicolas Cage, who is like completely off the deep end. Like, I feel that it makes for you're like, God, I want to see what's happening in the second act, third act. Makes you become really invested in the story. Now I will say this about Harker. A couple things. One, I don't know if the psychic thing really paid off for me. I felt like it was, I don't know. It almost felt like it was a little unnecessary, but I also thought the scene where she's in the office, where she's guessing the things, or she's like, to me, I felt that was like an homage to Blade Runner, for sure. But I was like, I thought it would play more into what happened. Like, she kind of writes it off being like, I was wrong 50% of the time. What did she say? She's like, oh, you were right 50% of the time. She's like, I was wrong 50% of the time. But like, I felt like it was, I don't know if the movie needed it. Like, I felt, maybe Vic, that's what you were talking about it being a different, like all these kinds of, like, there's 3 different movies happening at the same time. Like, it's almost like a sci-fi type thing that's like attached to this movie that's maybe more religious horror than sci-fi horror, obviously. Like, I don't know. I don't know.
I have a theory. I have a theory that just came to me, actually. So again, we've mentioned spoilers are a thing here, so I'm just going to talk about it. Spoilers, but the whole spoilers, we know. So
like
the whole relationship between Harker and this devil demonic character that is sort of like essentially protecting her in a way, and having these sacrifices to kind of keep her protected and keep her going. What if that's just that the little psychic moment is just someone stopping and going, don't go in that house, because we've got a job to do. You've got more dolls to ship out to people's houses to get more families coming to me. So what if that's the reason that it just stops in once and then we don't see it again? Because it's sort of not divine intervention, but supernatural satanic intervention, perhaps.
I think they were trying to fool us. I think it was one of these, like, trying to mislead us in terms of like the path of where it was going, right? They're like, I'm giving you this inch of this, and she might be psychic, and she's super logic in this movie the whole time, guys? Like, she's super like, yeah, this is my brain, I'm super smart, I just know how to piece things together, like science. And then you literally have that moment where it's like she just connects it. It's like, listen, Linda, you were there for like how many hours and you figured this out? That's when it's like we got to the end and I was like, obviously, this is all like, what do you call it? Like suppressed memories coming back to her.
So there was that scene too where like Nicolas Cage, it's not explained in the scene at the part of the movie. But you piece it together at the end where he puts that cloak over the doll and he says, you can't see anything. Or what does he say? And that's obviously supposed to be Harker, I think. Like, that's the Harker doll.
Yes.
Where he's like, you're in the dark or whatever. So I think that's why she can't find him in the basement. And I also think that, so she's only like half aware of things that are going on. But again, I don't know if I needed the psychic ability thing. I feel like I'm like, okay, but like, wouldn't that just stop that from happening. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like the rules of the movie were like a little unclear on that. I don't think they broke them. I just felt that they just needed like a little bit of an extra thing. Now, again, I might watch the movie a second time and be like, oh yeah, of course, like this thing, right? But the other scene too, like at the start where her and the other agent are going to
puppy dogs.
Yeah. So someone else joining the panel.
Yeah.
So but like when she goes to the house and with the other agent gets killed.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going into the and then she just goes in, weapon drawn, and she finds that guy and he's just sitting on the bed. I didn't quite get that scene either. And I was like, is that, now looking back, is that because like the devil is influencing that guy, or was it something else? Like I was surprised. Like a part of me was like, kind of like, that's when I started, like around the midway point of the film, I was like, oh no, like don't do this thing where it's like all in her head. Don't do this thing that it's like, this is a dream or she's the actual killer. Like I was like, don't do that.
Oh.
And they didn't, thankfully. But like I was worried because there was a lot of, I think like you were saying, there was a lot of like kind of, there was a couple of red herrings here and there that were like, this is really important. And then it wasn't. And I think it was indie rules. So like, I think it was well put together for the budget they had. But I will say I'm always skeptical of that in general, because once upon a time I watched a show called Lost and it ruined my appreciation for red herrings, I think, because I feel like I hated that show for that reason. And I still hate that show. And I hate Lost. It was like, yes, it was fun to watch, but I hated the end. I was so mad at the end of that. Anyway. But still, it was like that bear. It's important. That bear over there, and they're like, no, it's just a bear.
Forget about it. Forget.
No. You specifically zoomed in on its eyes. Like it's supposed to mean something. No. It's just a thing. Like it's like I hate that type of filmmaking. I think it's such bullshit. But again, I don't think they went that far on this. I think they were, but there was still a little bit of I felt they could have just woven that into the plot just a little bit more, but I just don't know. I might have to watch it again.
I wonder, and I'd be curious to, when I eventually do a rewatch of it, pay super close attention to the scene where she's in the neighborhood and get the sense about the house to see if there's one of those shadowy satanic goat-like creatures in the background of that, because that again would kind of tip the hat to satanic intervention as opposed to like actual psychic abilities, because she says that she has these things come up through her life on occasion, and as we know, she's kind of had this influence going over and this protection going over her through her entire life. So to me, that would kind of point to that very clearly. If it's like these moments that you see it popping up in the background, it's that little influence kind of tapping her on the shoulder, being like, don't go in the house, let your partner go in there first, type of thing. But that's just my thoughts. And then also, again, because the guy in the house obviously is very combative at first, but then calms down immediately, could potentially,
and he just surrenders, on
the shoulder, which again could be the influence tapping him on the shoulder. That would make sense to me. I would buy that. I think I just talked myself into the logic of that whole scenario.
Okay,
that would make sense. Or like even like hypnosis stuff, getting involved in that. Like that would totally make sense too.
And I wondered about that too, with relation to the dolls and like the black orbs that were in their heads. Like obviously, obviously that was like a vessel for evil, right? Like, or the evil, a part, like a piece of the evil to be passed on. Talking about plot points, you might disagree. But hold on, let me finish. Let me finish, Kells, for the love of God.
For the love of God and all that is holy.
But speaking of the plot, let's talk about the ending, because I feel that this is kind of comes in. So again, spoilers, guys, if you don't want it ruined. But like, the dolls are such an intricate part of this plot, and I felt like the plot hole for me was and I had to really think about this, and I don't know where I sit on it now because I've thought about it too much, I think. But the dolls being dropped off at the houses, and do the dolls stay in the house? because I felt like when she puts together the thing, what is the thing that she figures out about all the I couldn't remember. She figures out something about all the crime scenes, and she says all the crime scenes have
Birthdays.
this. What's that?
It's the birthdays, the days
Yeah.
of the month.
The birthdays.
The
yes,
algorithm. She makes that
Yeah.
algorithm. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
That's all
too, when he uses it.
Zodiac on this.
Yeah.
No.
So I did, but I'm like, okay, but if there's a child-sized doll in every house, like at the crime scene, I was like, wouldn't that be like, I don't know, like the first fucking thing you would notice?
No, but so they hid that doll, right? Because that's when she goes into the barn and she finds that doll upstairs. So
But
That's the
everyone
first-
else
was
had a
taking them
doll
back.
too.
That's the
Because
first
the
doll.
little girl lived. So they hid the first doll. But then the
Right.
little
Because that was the girl who was in the
in the coma, Kiernan
the mental
Shipdash.
institution or in the
Yes,
hospital or
that
whatever.
when they found the doll and they opened up the ball, suddenly she was no longer catatonic and she was able to have full conversations and like was very lucid and but not lucid, but she was very present.
Right.
So yeah, so I think but I had the same thing. I was like, where are the other dolls? Because I don't know if someone is like taking them on the way out before they leave the crime scene, or like if they're just like, I don't see it, I don't know what you're talking
So
about.
I was thinking about that. I was like, does that happen? Because I was like, wait a second. I was like, is it the same doll? Is it just the same doll that's like kind of
No, different
redressed and
hair.
repurposed for different hair and put into different homes? Or are they all these dolls and he's making all these dolls all the time? So I wasn't sure if that was clear.
Well, he is a doll maker, Benner.
Right. But like, you know, how many dolls can a guy make? Right. Like he's got other stuff to do, like listen to metal records and shit. Right. So he's got to go to the hardware store. No, but I was like, but I was like, how many dolls and are they leaving them there or is she taking them with her? And I couldn't quite remember when I came out of the theater, but it's not a deal breaker for me. But I did wonder, and I was like, I feel like there's something there that's supposed to make sense that maybe I'm missing, but I'm not quite sure. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, because I had the same thought. I remember chatting with you about it. It was like, but what about the dolls? Which again, are they taking them out? I don't know, but I do think that it was really kind of a neat detail that it was human hair that was used on the dolls. I imagine it was human hair from the actual little girl that it's kind of matching. One thing that I kind of thought about at the end of the film as well is like, she gets there and there's this doll left over with an undestroyed thing in its head. And I guess someone asked Oz Perkins about it being like, well, what about the end? What about the final doll? And he's like, yeah, not my problem. Which I think is kind of actually a great response because it's like, it doesn't matter. It leaves it up to the audience. But like, what do you think happened? Now there's this little girl that's running around that potentially still has her essence trapped in this little doll that has not been destroyed. But he's like, that's your thing. So maybe he does that. By any chance, leave some room for a sequel? I don't know. I kind of hope so, but it's not my only thought. Someone else has had that thought.
Yeah,
so there we go.
Alloway.
And hey, listen, thanks. We should just take a little second just to thank everyone.
Yes, I would
for
like
tuning in.
to.
And listen, we
And say
appreciate
hi to
everyone's
people.
comments saying that you're here and here to support. Thank you so much for tuning in. And of course, make sure you follow Makeup Billy at Makeup Billy, both on Instagram, and you can check her out on YouTube. So make sure you hit the link down below. Subscribe to her channel as well as our own channel, Black Fawn Distro. But of course, guys, if you're still watching, let us know your thoughts. Let us know if you have questions. Do you want to know what we thought about some things? We're going to talk about that ending, which I think is a great segue, Kells. But yeah, anyone out there, if you want to ask us a question of what we thought about this movie, or if you had some thoughts or a comment about what we're talking about, let's get you involved. Let's get you a part of the broadcast. We'd love to put
interactive.
Interact 2024.
While we wait for you guys, I'm gonna jump in.
Yeah.
Did you guys see it coming? I saw it coming with the little girl. I'm like, her birthday's for sure around the corner. I know that cop dad is in trouble. Like, it's happening.
Well, because they even talk earlier. She's like, oh, can you come to my birthday party? And it's like, oh, well, Planton, there you go.
It was really well done. Like I felt like it was just right amount of time had lapsed where I was like, oh, like it wasn't just like it wasn't like Blair Underwood being like, see what you can do about that situation, Harker. I got to go out and get a birthday cake. Like it wasn't like dropped a bunch of times. It was more like like she was this like this socially awkward sort of person, and she was just trying to integrate herself with this little kid. I thought it was a really great scene too with his daughter at the start. So it was just right amount of time where you kind of forgot. So, but near the end, I was like, oh wait, like oh shit, like yeah.
As soon as they're like, you're going to be late for the party, I was like, oh shit. But I think also it's a really clever bit of writing too, because it introduces that idea earlier on in the film. So when she's like rushing to it at the end and we didn't know that there's a birthday party happening, it's like, whose parties, what is happening? What is going on here? So I love that they introduced that scene early on to A, have some foreshadowing for the party, and B, also give us a little bit of insight to Harker's character and how she interacts, and also the fact that she's been sort of welcomed into this family so warmly, which makes it that much more effective when, everything kind of at the end there.
Go side. Yeah. And I think like the ending, like, so I thought the solid twist was the fact that he was in the basement the whole time. I thought was genius. And I really thought how they executed that was pretty great. I didn't really see that coming. I'll be totally honest.
No, but basement dweller, I questioned it. I'm not going to lie. As a basement dweller, I was like, I don't believe this.
Yeah. When the mom
if it was me, I'd be poking around that basement. I'd find that guy like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
It's like you're like
you got to be a nosier kid. Come on.
You're gonna pay me money. You're buy me stuff, blow your cover. But I felt like the start of the movie was so brilliant, super creepy, and I thought that reveal at the end was pretty spot on. I did like the fact that like even the doll, like it was revealed, like, and that scene with the doll where her mom shoots the doll's head and the black smoke comes, like what an iconic, like I think that was used as one of the pieces of marketing too, like
it was in the trailer.
I think it was on a poster as well, like really interesting visual. So awesome, full marks for that. But I did wonder if they were going to do, I was like, is this like, I kind of I thought of Fight Club a little bit too, where it's just sort of like an alter ego. And then I was like, are they going to do the old switcheroo that her mom is actually another part of her psyche? But they didn't do that either, which I was thankful for. So although I agree, Vic, that like there's some red herrings here that I think have varying degrees of payoff, I do feel like they sidestepped these big cliche potholes. And they didn't fall into them, which I was thankful for, because I was like, it just, every time a movie does that, I feel like I become more invested in it, right? Like I'm like, oh, I'm glad you didn't choose the sneaky, silly way, like or the cheesy way to do this. So now I'm like more interested to see what you've come up with. And I feel like the ending for me, I feel like the reveal of him being in the basement the whole time was such an awesome reveal. That whole sequence was fantastic. And then when she gets to the house, I felt like this movie needed an extra scene. And I don't know what that would be, but I did feel the ending felt like a bit rushed for some weird reason. And I had a lot of thought. Like, so this is what I got from Kells. I messaged Kells is going to see Longlegs, right? I hadn't seen it yet. I didn't catch it opening weekend. I went to see it the week after. And I texted her. I said, hey, did you see Longlegs? And she goes, yeah, I did. And I have thoughts. So go see it and we'll talk. That's what her text was. And I was like, uh-oh. I was like, what does that mean? Like to quote you, Vicky, I was like, oh no.
No.
So I was like, but I really enjoyed it, but I did feel like the ending was like, and it's one of those things where I wished I hadn't listened to like the director's explanation. Like sometimes I feel like it's like, sometimes I really want to know what the lyrics of a song mean and where they came from. And then sometimes I just don't want anyone to ever tell me. And I kind of like those artists that are sort of like, well, if I tell you where the lyrics came from, you're going to see them in a different light and the song's not going to mean the same thing to you because it's going to like someone will not like the song anymore because the lyrics come from this other place. And I kind of felt like the interviews around there were kind of a little bit like that. It's almost like they didn't quite know how to end this movie. And I felt like they picked an ending that was pretty solid, but that left a lot of questions hanging in the balance that I thought. So my perception of it was that it didn't matter who she killed, that the evil was somehow lurking and was going to haunt her. Like, and I kind of thought as well, speaking of if there's a potential for the sequel, I kind of almost felt like she was the new Longlegs. Like she had become this evil entity that was now plagued by the entity. That's kind of what I felt like. So the idea that her mom was going around, her mom had made the deal with the devil to keep her alive, and that, and so this has gone on for years and years and years and years and years. And then I felt at the end where she couldn't really save anybody other than the little girl. And the only way to keep the little girl alive is to start killing more people. And that's
what if
why
the little girl is the new Lee?
What's that?
What if the little girl is the new Lee, and that's why they still have the doll?
Ooh.
Oh, that's so yeah. That's that exactly. So that she would basically take the place of either Longlegs or take the place of her mom, as this sort of like virtuous killer that would have to do this in order for like the greater good or whatever. I was a little perplexed, like and so when I think the director came out and said, well, it's just the devil and he just wants to fuck with people, and like, and I was just like, no.
I need more.
Don't say that out loud, because like obviously he's a devil, man. But I just felt like it needs to be more nefarious than that. It needs to be more like, I always feel like the devil, as far as like a cinematic projection of what that is the breaking of the human spirit, of the breaking of someone's individuality or their self-worth or their moral compass, like the absolute like smashing of that, not just like fucking around with people. Like I really do feel, and it's more than just killing and death and manipulation. I really feel it's like the breaking of the human spirit and the soul is what the devil's interested in, right? That's just how I view it. But
I mean, it's all about getting Harker to the place that she shoots her mom in the head. Like that's the flourish. That's the breaking someone down to their I saw the devil moment of just like, haha, I got you. In my opinion, that's kind of how I saw it, is like, if you're looking for like something where he can do this big like finishing move and like finish him type of thing, like that seems like the big
like
emotional finish him. Yeah, that's the big emotional Mortal Kombat finish him.
That's when his legs get really long.
Yeah.
Is that the end of the movie? That's his finishing move.
Yeah.
Turns into Del Slim. It's a wild time.
Exactly. I would watch that movie, actually. That would be pretty great. Let's throw to a question we have here. I want Vicky to start on this. Have you seen the director's other films, and how does this compare if you have?
So you were mentioning he also did Black Coat's Daughter, right? Which is a fantastic film. Yeah. I saw that, I think it was last year, and that film is probably one of my favorite exorcism style movies I've ever seen, I'd have to say. I would say that film wraps up a story better than this one. Don't hate me for it, but I gotta say it. Like, that movie is a really, really freaking good film. Yeah.
It feels like thematically very similar to this as well. Like, I get that he really kind of seems to like to dabble in like the dark and satanic, and I love that. I think that's amazing because it's a really interesting topic to dabble in. So Black Coat's Daughter, I agree. It's such a fascinating kind of multi-layered film that kind of jumps around a little bit, and you don't really realize it's been jumping around until you're like, oh, it clicks, and you're like, oh, that's cool. But Hansel and Gretel I saw, and I was like, I wasn't really sure what to expect with that one. It's fine. I enjoyed it. Hansel and Gretel I thought was good. And then I'm the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House was also him, I believe. And that movie was actually pretty cool. I think that was the one that was all black and white that was on Netflix, I think. I can't remember if that was the one that was all black and white, but it was 2016. I'm trying to remember that. It definitely has like some cool themes, some cool ideas, and it's that like this. It's about this lady that's like taking care of an elderly woman in this house. It's kind of nurse character that's coming in, and I think those stories are always really interesting, where someone's like taking care of somebody and they don't really know who that person is or what's going on. So I liked that, and yeah, I agree that with this comment here, I can't get my mouse, that Hansel and Gretel was visually amazing. It looked so freaking cool, that movie. So I think he also has a really good eye for visuals, Oz Perkins.
Totally.
Yeah. Better, have you seen the films? Yeah.
No, this is my first introduction to this guy as a director. So I got to check those out for sure, because I really did. I really did like the style of the film, and I felt like there was like equal parts influence, obviously, from the 90s thrillers, Silence of the Lambs, obviously, which personal plug for me and Kells, we just did our 90s night episode on Silence of the Lambs. It's a super in-depth analysis, but we did talk about that and how influential that movie has been for 30 years, where people don't really know how influential Silence of the Lambs has been as a film on all these other filmmakers. But shades of Seven, a lot of shades of the X-Files, I thought, especially those episodes that dealt with sort of like any sort of like religious or satanic kind of component. But yeah, I did feel like he's got a really good sense of just creating that sense of dread, where I was like, I don't like this. I don't like how this is making me feel for some weird reason. And I do like feeling like that. Like, it reminded me, like, I think Ari Aster, I think, is another guy that, like, Hereditary, I think, was kind of gave me that sort of vibe. I know Hereditary is an overused comparison for everything nowadays, but really it's just like, I know something bad's going to happen. I just don't know what it is. And and then when something bad doesn't happen and then it does, you're kind of like caught off guard, because you're like we said at the top of the broadcast, like, you're always kind of kept a little bit off kilter. So I'd be fascinated to see what he does next.
Well, there's an answer to that, because this is also a thing that's happening. He has a Monkey Shines reboot that is coming out next year. I believe it's in pre-production right now. So I think that one is.
Is that the trailer that just dropped? It's called The Monkey or something?
The Monkey. Yeah, The Monkey. I can't remember if
it's a Stephen King book.
Who's producing that? It's a Stephen King book, but there's somebody that's really intense that's producing it. And I'm trying to remember who's producing it.
That's the sci-fi one, right? The guy's in the wheelchair and he gets that monkey.
That's the
Monkey Shines. But is that based on the same?
Oh, it's produced by James Wan. That's who it's produced by.
Okay.
Yeah.
James Wan.
James Wan is like, man, like he's.
And then also this one, just to answer real quick, is the name of the movie is I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, which is on Netflix.
Kells, I sense a Streams and Screams in your future.
Maybe I should, because it's been a long time since I've seen it. And I think that one was one that I think it really impressed me. Here's the thing. This is why I love doing Streams and Screams, because I will see a movie and then I will completely forget about the movie until I watch it again and go, oh yeah, that's a really great movie. I remember I liked that. So I get to enjoy it all over again for a second time. So that's why I really enjoy doing Screams and Screams. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I really like that movie, but I don't remember a damn thing about it. So let's go revisit it. And that's usually what happens. So I will go back to I'm the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House for that reason.
You gotta see Leprechaun in Vegas. I think it was two
Leprechaun
or
3. Yeah.
Leprechaun so good.
My favorite. Oh, in space when he I think, oh my God.
Dude, we're just going to clip this part and we're like, check out the sneak preview of our episode on Longlegs, and it's just going to be you guys being like, Leprechaun in Vegas?
Leprechaun.
Is that I just wanted to get back to the ending of this film, because I really feel like this is like the touch point for me, is that I always say the ending of your film is one of the most important things of the movie, because it's the last thing that people see before they leave the theater, and it's the first thing they think about.
It's movie gymnastics. You got to stick the landing. And I think this movie did an okay. Like, again, it's kind of like, because it has that. I think the twist is really good, and then it has this ending at the end, and I wasn't quite sure. Like, I think I still like it. I'm just not going to watch any interviews with Osgood Perkins. But maybe that's just his way. Who knows, right? Maybe it was taken out of context. Maybe it was just a bit of a sarcastic comment. Who knows? But I felt like there was something else going on with that. Like, it was such an overarching evil that lasted for decades. I didn't think that it didn't feel to me like the movie was over. Like, the story for those characters was over. And I felt like my biggest concern, and not like, again, I gave it 4 out of 5. I highly recommend it. I'll be buying it on 4K. But I couldn't help but think like the ending was just a little bit like, she doesn't save Blair Underwood. Like, she shoots him. And I was like, but it doesn't, I don't know if that guy's dead though. That was kind of left up to interpretation. But I did feel like
like at the end, it would be it was like almost like there should be an extra scene or something where they come and they try and figure out what's happened in this house with all these dead bodies, right? Because how are they going to explain that? She would be the one to be able to explain it. And I felt like the thread throughout the movie was like, who do you trust to let in your home that's not necessarily couldn't necessarily be trustworthy. Not that this movie had any like sort of like hidden messages or anything, but I felt it was interesting that it was like she worked for the church and people would let her into their homes without asking any questions. And I felt how did that connect to her being an FBI agent and being let in people's homes without any questions. And I kind of felt like if she was the new Longlegs, she could probably easily do that and bring in a piece of evidence, quote unquote, which is like maybe one of the dolls. And then the doll influences the family to kill themselves. So speaking of which, is there a sequel? I don't know. I kind of feel like there should be, but maybe not. I understand that there probably wouldn't be. You don't want a sequel?
I never want a sequel. Here's the thing.
You were just talking about Leprechaun 3.
Well, like there's exceptions. There's franchises. That is a different story. But here's the thing. So this is where we have the counterpoint of the episode, because I have a disagreement when it comes to how movies end, and I will get into that in a minute.
Okay.
But there are certain films that I feel like, and this actually maybe kind of goes a perfect segue into it. I feel like as audiences, sometimes we get spoiled into having our hand held with an ending. I love it when a movie just like ends and you don't really know where it's going next, because that's reality. That's more real than everything being tied up neat with a bow, riding off into the sunset with your new partner that you fell in love with while you were stopping a speeding bus from crashing into whatever.
Well, I'm not asking for that ending.
No, but my point being is that I feel like there's a lot of interesting ideas that come with like a movie that has questions unanswered, a movie that has untied up ends, a movie that leaves you thinking, well, what do they do now? I think that's exciting. And I love to see that in films. And nothing brings me more like disappointment than when you have a movie that I think ends so perfectly vague and so open-ended that gives you a lot of questions, makes you curious to think about it more, continues that conversation on to then have a follow-up sequel, be like, nope, this is what happened. I would much rather not know. I would much rather be like, who knows what happens with Longlegs? Is it going to be Harker and Ruby, or is it going to is this stops here? Is she going to solve all these other things? I like not knowing. I like that it's not my story, it's her story. And I really enjoy having that be open-ended and be open to interpretation. And I feel like a sequel would really take away from that. But that's
even if the sequel was called Longer Legs.
If it was Longlegs in space, then maybe I would go for it.
Longest legs would be the one in
longest
space.
Legs.
So long.
The longest legs.
So
He's
long.
reached so high.
Yeah, so long.
So Vicky, I wonder what you thought about the ending as well, because I want to be our tiebreaker here on this.
Do you think? I mean, I'm sorry. Just for clarity, I'm not saying I don't think that this movie needs a sequel either. I'm just saying I am still kind of interested in like Harker as a character, which is a testament to the film, right? It's like it's not like
again, leaves you asking questions, makes you think about it, right?
Yes. Vic, what's your take?
Brains. So like I completely agree in the sense like when we're talking about hand holding in films, I hate that. I hate when a movie is like, oh my God, this is why it happened. And I do feel like this movie started to spell it out near the end. And I was like, you don't need to show me the mom doing her runs. Like I get it. You didn't even like, you already spelt it out in some other scenes, but they do try to take you on that. Well, this is why. And then you're there. And I was like,
sorry, Vic, not to interrupt, but I kind of feel like that's what like kept rolling my brain around to that plot point was the idea like, wait a second, is she leaving the dolls? Because if she just explained it and not had these like flashbacks, I feel like I don't know if I would have thought about that. I think it's because she was carrying that big box. And I think in my, as much as I want to say to everyone watching that I'm very much like, when I'm watching the movie, in my head is like, that's an awfully big box to be lugging around,
right?
And I'm sorry, I just can't. Yeah, it's like, so is she dropping? So then I started out, I was like, she's dropping off I mean, is there blood getting on the box? Is there anything to like that would like, attach her to this, or is she leaving the doll there or whatever? But if you're right, I think if she had just explained the story and not shown in those flashbacks, I don't know if I would have even thought about that. I would have just been like, well, there's information I don't know because she's an untrustworthy source of information, but I am still going to believe what she's telling me. So yeah, that's an interesting point, because I don't know if I would have put that together.
It was the car scene, right? When you see her, that was...
Yeah.
Let's talk about favorite scenes. Okay,
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
car scene near the end. Oh,
Yeah, which one, sorry?
like right near the end, it's the partner of the cop is in the car waiting for Harker.
Oh, that's
the lady.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant scene.
And you could like see someone.
Beep, boop, 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 boop. And it's
Love.
like you were saying, the pacing of this film, they don't boom when you think they're gonna boom. They wait like an extra like 3 seconds. That's some 3 Mississippis that you're staring at this woman out the window. And boy, was that effective. And that's when, to me, that was like, oh, this all makes sense. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
to me,
that was the moment where like you can stop the hand holding. We get it now for
exactly.
sure.
Yeah.
I thought the scenes when they just showed the doll and the eyes kind of lit up like very slowly, I thought was brilliantly done. They do that in a couple of spots in the movie. One of my favorite scenes, speaking of exactly what you just said, Vic, was like the scene where Longlegs is in the holding cell and they're interviewing him on the TV, and it's like a live, not just that, but before that, where they're watching him on the screen, and she says pause that, and then they sit down, but his face is still like paused
on there
on the screen, and the whole time I was like, okay, but like if the devil's at work here, I was just waiting for the video to unpause. Like I thought it would like judder or be like something really weird, or every time it shot over his shoulder, it would like he would change or something like just like the
suddenly
it was that we like to party, we like to party, like I don't know, like I just don't know if like I was waiting for that, but it was so good because they resisted that urge, and they were just like, we're just gonna make him look super fucked up behind you. And but again, the scene where she goes to meet him again, very I think it was more Seven, not as opposed to Silence of the Lambs, but just the fact that like they were sitting down, or she was sitting down with him and having that kind of like face to face, and I mean Nicolas Cage brilliant in that scene, and so weird and off-putting and unsettling and you know great. Kells, you got any favorite scenes? What you got? A couple, I think. Right?
Yes, and first I have to say that, like, speaking of Hereditary and then Talk to Me and Longlegs, the new not jump scare but terrifying trend of just like having all of a sudden just like bam, like that happening in movies a lot now.
That's the new thing.
That seems to be the new thing. Like I love it and I hate it at the same time, because I can feel my nose crunch. Like it also makes me think of Death Proof when he like slams on the brakes. And anyways, anytime someone gets their nose crunched in a movie, I like feel it in my bones in a way that like makes me very physically uncomfortable, and I love it because I think.
What did I just see? I just saw something with that.
I just saw something with that. It was like a keyboard.
I saw Love Lies Bleeding.
Yes.
Had to see that where I was like, yeah.
Yeah. And there's one of those in Unfriended 2, Dark Web. There's one of those moments in there as well. It comes up every now and again, and every single time I'm like, it's super great. But favorite scenes for me, I agree. I think that interrogation scene is so perfectly unnerving, and I love that was the first time she saw him. I think that's such a great little detail. I don't know why as soon as he went down once, like 7 people didn't come running in the room to stop him, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, I love the interrogation
budget
scene.
cut, the 90s, man, budget cut.
It's true. They were watching from a very, very distant room. It took them a minute. They had to, they didn't have a camera right outside the door. They're like looking in the window of the door, like, what's happening? Yeah. So yeah, I love that scene. I love the scene where Harker just sort of like, again, comes to that realization, figures everything out. I love the last scene just because it made me feel very sad, and I liked that. Yeah, I think for me, an overwhelming trend in the movies that I watch is like any scene that I watch that makes me go, Is like my favorite scene in a movie. I love that. I love to like have a movie make me feel upset. I think that's my favorite feeling when I watch a movie. I don't know what that says about me as a person,
Yeah, I don't
but
know
I
either.
love to feel upset.
I
in
agree
movies.
100% though. It's movies that make you feel, right? And that's what really
Mhm.
makes you just remember too, right?
Exactly. They linger.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mhm,
Yeah, I
mhm.
think the overall sense of the film too was that you know, it did have something to say and a story to
Yes.
tell, and I feel that's like I think my criticism on the end is of the film is that I think certain things in that ending scene don't quite add up to what we've seen before. So for instance, like I was trying to think of like the scene at the start where she goes into the house in the suburbs with her partner gets shot, and
Another
she
favorite
goes,
scene.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I really like that scene, and you could tell
Mhm.
like right away, like because I'm sort of in a peripheral way attached to the film industry, I know how a lot of these films are made. I knew like as soon as she goes in the house, I go, I know how they're covering for a low budget here, and that's totally fine because they're using it, and with all those sheets and stuff like
Yeah.
that, like I was
Mhm.
like, I'm totally fine with this because it's like there's some they're creating something here, and I get it. But she did go into the house, like she doesn't wait for backup, gun drawn, goes into the house by herself to try and find whoever killed, like, you know, her partner or at least the other cop that she was with. At the end of the film, when she goes into like Blair Underwood's house for the birthday party, I was just kind of like, I don't know. I feel like she would have gone in there like full tilt, but I wasn't sure. Like I especially, and then I was like, okay, but that's fine. Then her mom's there and things are weird and there's a kid there and I get it now that she's in the house and, you know, whatever. But I did feel like when the mom goes in, like she knows what's up. Like when she goes in there, like she puts it all, like she's put it all together. Like it's not a surprise that people are acting weird and her mom's there. Like she knows all this is going down. And then but she lets the wife go into the mom go in, or not her mom, sorry, Blair Underwood's wife go into the kitchen. I was like, I feel like you would have saved her by then. Like I feel like there's
Mhm.
just something else going on. Like I just felt like it was like a little, there was something that just didn't quite add up to me on that scene. So that was like the one thing that I kept going back to, and I was like, I just don't know if that connects well with her character. But having
She was a
said
little too
that,
lenient.
I'm too. Oh, you too. Yeah, she was like,
No, she was too lenient. She's like, yeah, I'll go off in the kitchen. That's fine. It's like, don't do that.
yeah, and I felt like, but again, like I'm being maybe a bit too critical. And indie rules again, we're not being trying to be too critical. I just felt like
Be
that ending scene
honest.
just needed a little bit of finessing to like really
Mhm.
land the ending, because I didn't think it was like a super gut punch ending. I feel like I kind of felt like I knew what was happening. Like it wasn't like Vicky mentioned hand holding. I don't think it was hand holding at the very end in that very ending sequence, but I did feel like I kind of knew what was going to happen.
Mhm.
Like I was like, I feel like someone. I mean, she's probably going to kill her mom, right? Like I just kind of felt like that was a natural ending of the film. So the fact that that happens anyway, but she still doesn't save like the innocent people, I was like a little. It seemed a little strange to me how that they ended that off. However, perhaps maybe she can't think like that anymore because she's had metaphorically her mind sort of severed from this thing. And maybe that's how the psychic thing plays into that. I'm not sure. So I'd have to rewatch it again. But that was the only thing that really, I kept going back to that. But maybe that's a mark of a good film if you keep thinking about it, right? So
Yeah.
Mhm.
Speaking of continuing to think about it, Vicky, I have a question for you.
Go for it.
Will people be talking about this movie 10 years from now?
that's a great
Oh
question.
man, Galloway,
That's a
good
great question.
one. Yeah.
Mhm.
Honestly, John brought this up as soon as we left the theater. And I love, so like John isn't like a massive like horror buff. You know, he watches horror movies, but it's not his top pick. He's maybe more of like an action dude, Arnold Schwarzenegger in general. But we come out the film and he's like, I don't think anybody is going to dress up like Longlegs. You know what I mean? Like, I don't
Oh,
think
I don't
he's
know
the
about
next
that.
icon.
Yeah.
You right? Well, we're gonna see it at Frightmare in the Falls, right? So it's one of these
True.
things where it's like, would he be somebody that would be such a big icon 10 years from now, like Michael Myers, like Jason? I don't know.
Well, I think it's a lot less of a slasher film. Like, I think,
Yeah.
well, I don't know. Like, and again, I think, like, you know, how many people do you see dressed up like Hannibal Lecter? How many people do you see dressed up like John Doe from Seven? Like, I don't think you see that at conventions. I think it's more directed towards the more over the top kind of slasher
Immediately
characters.
recognizable. Yeah.
But having said that, because that's kind of so overdone, and understandably, they're icons, right? I mean, everyone wants to dress up like Michael Myers. It's an easy costume to put together, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. No, not saying anything about that.
No
Just
tea, no
saying,
shade.
like, it's kind of like, here's my costume, and half the people go, I don't even know who that is. Like, you know what I mean? So, I mean, but Hannibal Lecter, I mean, I'm sure, like I've seen on I go to a lot of conventions, obviously for the company and stuff, and I've seen a lot more like other characters than, like, I've seen more Walter Whites than I've seen Hannibal Lecter. You know what I mean? Like, it's
absolutely.
like,
I know what
I don't
you're
know,
saying.
like, but you think
Yeah.
so I don't know. I think, but again, having said that, will people going to be talking about this movie after 10? I mean, I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, I think it kind of falls into, I mean, I hate using the comparison of It Follows, but I feel like for different reasons, like I remember watching It Follows and being like, I was like, how is this not a franchise? Like, how is this has franchise written all over it? Like, give these filmmakers $10 million, see what they can do with it, then give them 20, then give them 30, like just like they did with Saw, right? But now they are making They Follow, right, which is the sequel to It Follows. They are making that movie 10 years after the fact, and I'm interested to see if, like, 10 years of gestating an idea and finishing a script and really having a story to tell or a story to continue and another chapter to tell. I'm so excited for that film because I feel like that's how movies and stories are supposed to be told. Like, when someone is inspired enough to be like, I'm really going to sit down and focus on this because it's got to be good because it's coming out 10 years from now. So in answer to that question, I'm interested to see if there is a sequel, and not saying there needs to be, but I'm wondering if there is, like, 10 years from now. I wonder if the film will have the legs to warrant that, like, because I do feel it was memorable, and I was trying to think. The other thing too is, like, like, for the critical acclaim, like, is it worthy of getting the accolades that it's getting? Is a question. I think on an indie level, I think 100%. I think the characteristics of the film and marketing, taking that and comparing it to Silence of the Lambs, I think is a brilliant marketing move, but I don't necessarily, I think it's a high standard to place on top of that. Like, 5-time Academy Award winning film, Silence of the Lambs, compared to this indie budget film, it's comparable, but I think it's kind of like, it's an unfair comparison between the two. Yeah. So whether or not it becomes a memorable film, I don't know. I think it might have the ability to create a bit of a cult following, right? I was trying to think of, like, sorry, and maybe you can help me out with this, Kells. I was trying to think of a film that was comparable to it that wasn't Silence of the Lambs or wasn't, Kiss the Girls or something like that. Like, what would be a film that you would compare it to? Yeah, that would be maybe a bit more like religious horror or psychological horror, as opposed to just like straight kind of cop procedural thriller.
Yeah, that's a good question. In terms of, like, something that kind of follows that same, the tone is so hard to capture, though, as I think that's the one thing that's really hard to kind of find a comparison. In terms of tone, the closest thing I can think of is The Black Coat's Daughter, and it's because it's also Oz Perkins, and it's very similar tonally. But in terms of the police procedural, there's really nothing like this. I just recently did an episode of Murmurs from the Morgue with Bree. We were talking about like police procedural horror movies. I would have talked about I Saw the Devil, but I've talked about it like 7,000 times this year, so I had to take a break from it. But, like, there's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of films that kind of have that.
just for the record, I Saw the Devil as Kells' favorite movie of all time.
That's a great movie.
I have to say that at least 4 times a year on the podcast
Yes.
now. So that's
Yeah. That's your contractual agreement that
it is a
we've reached.
fantastic movie.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
okay. All right.
But I think in terms of comparison, it really is difficult to find something that is comparable in tone as well as in topic. And I think for that reason, Longlegs, along with the fact that it has become such a cultural moment, especially with the marketing, is something that will be recognized 10 years from the future, whether it's something that'll be talked about the same way as, and this is the comparison everyone's going to make, but Hereditary. I don't think so. I think Hereditary kind of changed the genre in a way, or at least kind of added like a branch on the genre tree that hadn't been there before. And I think this is a leaf that's further down that branch. So I think it's something that it's not creating a new branch, but it's something that when we're having those conversations of these horror films that are very dark and very intentional and very atmospheric, this will definitely be one that we talk about, which I think is something that I love about genre film as well, is that like you can have so many different subgenres, you can have so many different types, and there's so much that can be said about each one, and you don't have to ignore others to kind of favor another film, I guess. But here's another question. First off, we have to say hi to Our Life in Horror. Hi.
Oh, hey.
What's up, guys? I just let you know what I was almost late to this live stream because I was listening to their live stream that they did at 7 p.m. I was like, oh, I'll throw this on while I'm putting together, and I was almost late for this. So good job, guys. Good job keeping me engaged.
Nice.
Yeah.
80s.
So let's grab. Should we grab one last question?
Yeah, let's do
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
Throw it up.
Okay. So last question: how long is too long to make a sequel?
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
How long is too long?
Because here's the
69 years, just because I'm in the
No.
The thing that I have with sequels is
And
I have like
you just say that and then you just leave the conversation.
just like
you
bounce.
just duck out. God.
Enjoy.
Mic dropped.
You know what? I'm not quite sure, but I definitely know that there's examples of movies that have been made where I'm like, ooh, I was like, had you made this like 6 years ago, you would have been on gold. But like if you now that you've made it now, it just falls, like it's just not, it just bombs. It's no good. I can think of some examples, not horror, but like, I mean, Zoolander 2 was a film that I was like, oh man, I was like, you guys should have put that out like 3 years after the first one, and you waited like 15 years or something. I can't remember. It's whatever that wait time is. And there was another film that was just like that too, where I was just like, oh, I was like, I don't know if why you're no, don't do that.
I think it depends on, are they planning on keeping anyone from the original cast? Because
does it though?
So,
I don't know if that matters now.
I think to me it does, because I think at a certain point, you kind of you hit an expiration date with the characters. I think you got to hit an expiration date with the characters.
I don't know why. That's out of context. There was an out of context Longlegs. I'm sorry. That's
what are you talking about?
No, it's supposed to be, we were only saying during puns, but for some reason I just wanted to do it.
It's just fun to do. It's just fun to do.
Okay, sorry, Cal. Sorry, I apologize. I'm out of line. I'm out of line. Very disrespectful.
You're out of legs. So I think that it kind of depends on if they're planning on keeping any of the original cast, and if so, because at a certain point, like, it starts to feel less like we have the story that we want to bring back and we love it so much, and more like, hey, you know what we haven't done in a while? Made some money. And that's kind of where it comes in for me, is I'm also like very nitpicky with my sequels. Like I'm very picky about like what I think can do a franchise and what can't, because I love genre cinema. Absolutely. I adore it. But I think that there are some films that are so much better as a one-off, just like a one and done, because it was like I was saying earlier, it's better to leave it to the audience to imagine where it went and to live with it than to hand feed them something that maybe they didn't want to eat, or like hand feed them a story that like, I didn't imagine it this way, or something that doesn't really fit with kind of where you were thinking or hoping it would go. So even though I know Talk to Me Too is also something they're working on, that was another film that was like, I feel like it kind of ended in such a nice, like, kind of drop moment that coming back to that story, even if it's somebody else and they're picking up elsewhere, feels a little bit like unnecessary to me. Though I do support the directors. I think they're fantastic. They make amazing work and they seem absolutely delightful. But I feel like that's a sequel that, to me, I would have been also okay with not having it. I would have been okay with them just taking that money and doing something else with it, a different idea that they wanted to try out. It's like if they made Hereditary 2, like, no, like that's not, if they made a Get Out 2, like that's not, it doesn't hit the same, you know what I mean? And so that's kind of where that's where I get picky about it. That's where I get to be like a little like
Get out again.
I get a bit of a curmudgeon-y. Keep getting out.
Keep getting out. Gotten out. Got
Gone.
out.
Gone.
We gotta throw these up. Hey, whoever Galloway is, hey,
Yeah.
thanks, because these are great quotes and great questions too.
Mhm.
So Beetlejuice is almost out. That's 36 years between sequels. Yes.
I was
what I'm
thinking
liking-
The Omen, no? Like The Omen, remember with Julia Stiles compared to like the 70s?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was a remake though, right?
Oh, it doesn't count. Okay,
Yeah,
fine.
remakes don't count.
The first Omen's really good though. Just
So
dropping that
good.
in there.
So good.
Like not the
I did
first
Stranger
movie, not
Springs
the
on
first,
it.
like, the movie, the first Omen.
The
not
movie, The First Omen.
movie.
I mean, the first Omen movie is also a really good movie, but the movie, The First Omen, is also a very good movie.
And I was going to say this too. Galloway again. Blade Runner almost as long. Blade Runner was a movie I didn't think I wanted. The Blade Runner sequel. It's too bad it bombed at the box office because it did. But I really did like Blade Runner the sequel, and I love Denis Villeneuve.
Yes, he's so good.
I think he's fantastic, and I think that movie was. I thought it was really impressive what he did with that film, and I loved every second of it. Now, having said that, there are sequels that I believe shouldn't have been made, and like I don't know, like there's some classic examples of when they've gone back to the well
They've
and
gone too far,
and they've said, "Oh, they're like this did okay. You know what we should do? You know what we should do, Bob? What's that, Jim? We should make a sequel to this." American Psycho 2, that's a great straight to video sequel that never needed to be made.
No.
An awful film.
I experienced it once and I was like, nah,
Awful.
I get
Yeah,
it.
it's super bad. William Shatner's in it, isn't he? Isn't
Like,
William
not
Shatner in
for
that
me.
movie? It's
I think he
ridiculous.
is. Yeah,
There's
I feel
Mila
like
Kunis.
anytime you're making a movie sequel to a film that was an adaptation of a book, but there's no book sequel to the film, if that makes sense. Like, there's no sequel to the book, but they're like, hey, let's take it and let's make another sequel without any of that. Then you're playing with fire, there, friend. Like you're dancing on some
Here's a comment
headstones.
from John. Disney was Star Wars. John. We don't talk about Disney and Star Wars anymore.
We're gonna get taken down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh
Can't
my
even say
God.
Star Wars. I'm kidding.
I
was
could. You
giggling
want to
at
do a
Blade
hot
Runner
stove?
too.
I'm like 10-hour hot stove on Star Wars. I'll tell you everything that's wrong with it. But like, it's
Do a
like,
marathon.
no, I don't know. Like I don't know. I mean, the other thing too, I will say, in conjunction with how long is too long, I would say there is a rushing sequel thing in this film market, especially driven by superhero movies.
Mhm.
I'm not a big fan of that. I like having 2 or 3 years between films, and it's like one of those things they started doing with, I want to say it was Back to the Future. They kind of shot Back to the Future 2 and 3 sort of at the same time to save on budgetary, and which is smart, right? If you're going to make 2 sequels. Unfortunately, that trilogy turned out great. And then they kind of did it with Lord of the Rings, and it worked out well with that too. And then ever since then, every time they've tried to do, we're going to shoot part 2 and 3 together, it always sometime now, at least, it feels like it's one big movie that's just being cut into 2. I hate the cliffhanger in movies. I feel like you should wrap up your second part, a la, speaking of Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back. You've got a very clear first episode, second middle part, ending. Dark Knight trilogy did it brilliantly. Even Lord of the Rings was really great at doing that, where it's like, yeah, okay, you've got these parts to this story that you're telling. But I hate the cliffhanger where it's like, to be continued. Like, this isn't TV from the 90s, it's a feature film. Treat it that way. So I do feel like films I think creative people as well need to get out of that pocket, out of that world that they've kind of created, and then they need to go back to it to get inspired again to make a good sequel or a good third part. Unless you're on to part 4, which we all know goes to space.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love when it goes to space. No, I think that one thing that also worked really surprisingly well was the filming part 1 and part 2 at the same time as it did with Pearl and X, but that's unrelated. Vicky, question for you. In terms of like sequels and just continuing on this conversation, what do you think is like the greatest, or at least your favorite sequel of a film that you maybe enjoyed, or I'm not saying which like the sequel is better than the original. I'm just saying if there's a sequel that is like near and dear to your heart.
Ooh, I mean, Halloween 2. It's great to watch it right after one another. Scream 2, fantastic. I think that was a really great one. 2s, Weekend at Bernie's 2, one of my top faves.
Yeah.
Same with Mannequin 2. Oh yeah. Yeah, those are 2 great films. Yeah.
Dude, that's why we have you on the podcast. You're like, I'm missing one. I'm missing one. Oh, right. Weekend at Bernie's too.
Do we have anything else that we want to touch on before? Because I imagine we should start wrapping up at some point, or we're going to keep talking for like 7 hours.
We said we were going to try and keep this at an hour. Remember that time?
Those are the days.
Remember 50 minutes ago when we said
just and for people who have stuck around long enough, for our regular show, for our Takeover Tuesday interview show, it's going to be an hour. These ones are probably going to be a bit more free spirited, very much.
Yes,
we take the railings off the bowling lanes. Anything can happen. It can go straight into the gutter, strikes, whatever you want.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm using a bowling analogy right now.
Let those long legs run. Just let them go.
Just like, why is this? Is it because did it come from this thing? And then
these are long legs, right?
Legs?
So,
yeah, they're long legs.
Dude, this is going to be the thumbnail.
This is going to be this will also be like the hand signal to haunt Frightmare in the Falls this year, basically.
Yes, thank you, John. Terminator 2 is the one that is maybe the greatest sequel ever made.
Yeah.
One could say Godfather 2 as well.
Aliens.
But, Aliens.
Or an aliens out there.
I just watched Aliens on 4K. I might have a review on that coming up because
so good. Not as good on 4K.
James Cameron used this sort of like AI technology to clean up the film. And it looks
too polished.
It looks too good. It looks too polished. And there's certain scenes where it looks awesome, but then there's certain scenes where you're like, they're not on an alien planet.
Yeah, give me the grit
on a sound stage.
Yeah,
which I think with the grain and
you need the grit.
Like not even the VHS, just the grain. It just looked a bit like more foreign and alien. Pardon the pun, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But
anyways, focus, Benner. Focus.
Sorry. Sequels I love. Terminator 2, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. I love Return of the Jedi. But horror stuff. I mean, Hellraiser 2 is one for me. I think I don't know. Like there's like a lot of the Hellraiser 2. What else? I mean probably Friday the 13th or sorry, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3. But again,
did you have another one?
I was gonna say
Dream Warriors. Yeah.
Oh, I just had a brain fart. Day of the Dead. Love it. Absolutely love it.
Day of the Dead or Dawn of the Dead?
Day of the Dead. I guess it's a third. That's anyways,
that still counts. That still counts.
So good.
Yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street. Right. Yeah, see, Rogue Toad. Toad. The greatest name ever.
Rogue Toad.
Dude, if that's not a mascot for a baseball team soon, I don't know.
Yeah.
He's like, oh no, Rogue Toad strikes again.
Bowling League, there you go.
But Dream Warriors was kind of like they kind of screwed up. I don't want to say they screwed up the second part. Second part, Nightmare on Elm Street, is kind of just like it's an odd movie, right? Like they didn't quite know what I don't know. I don't like it has its own. Evil Dead 2. But Evil Dead 2, I would argue and say Evil Dead 2 is it's just a remake of Evil Dead 1, right? Just saying. It's a remake of Evil Dead 1. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Look it up. That's what they did. They just remade the same movie.
No.
You're like,
They
wait a
started.
That's a true
They
story.
recapped the first bit and then they added on afterwards because it's not the same all the way through.
Okay,
the recap at the beginning.
okay,
So
but
yes and no, you're
I
right
would
and also
argue,
wrong.
however, on the right track, because I would say Army Darkness.
Yeah, Army Darkness
Fantastic film.
is excellent. Anyways, so shall we wrap things up? Is there any other thoughts that we have about Longlegs? Anything else we want to share? Any other legs that we need to stretch?
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
Wear pajama pants. Don't judge me. Are you guys gonna buy it when it comes out?
Yeah, I think I will.
Yeah.
I think it's like $50 right now in 4K, which is a little too pricey. But I think if I see it for like 25, 30, or if I see it used, I would pick it up. I mean, I definitely watch the film again. I think like I think it goes nicely with a couple other films that you could watch, and I think it's just nice. It's a decent film to have in your collection for the style and I would say the acting. And there's definitely, like, if you're a filmmaker too, I think it's a great indie film for filmmakers to watch and go, oh, okay, that's how they did. Oh, okay, that's how they sort of like covered this up. That's how they that's how they kind of overcame any sort of budgetary requirements. It's still a solid film. And so even stuff when they do like the evil and the shadows and the very, very simple very simple effects that wouldn't have taken a lot of like no CGI, very little blood work there. Oh my god, I forgot, we're not even recording. No.
We're not even recording.
All right, let's restart.
Kells is like, no, God, I've been trying to get out of here for 20 minutes. I think I'd be very interested to like pick up that film and watch like the director commentary and see if there's any special features behind, and see kind of how, hearing those stories, how Nicolas Cage got involved and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think it's so I would definitely highly recommend picking it up. I think it's a great entry into any collection, and I think that it's a job well done from both a thriller and sort of a horror point of view. Again, I don't think my ratings changed from the film. I think it's a solid 4 out of 5. I don't think I'd go higher than that, but I definitely wouldn't go any lower. So 80%, I think that's a solid rating. That's just how I rate movies. Everyone rates them differently, but I think it's a quality film. I'm glad I got to catch it in theaters, and I'm glad I got to discuss it with you guys.
Same.
Hooray! Yeah. Would you pick it up, Vicky?
Sorry?
Would you pick it up?
Yeah.
On the ownerships?
Yeah, you know what? It's one of those newer films that I do think would be worth having a part, I also love Nicolas Cage, so I loved him in Mandy, and his performance in this. I was like, I wanted more Nick Cage. Yeah. There's so many people who was like, there's too much, and I was like,
not enough.
That's
not
it.
Enough.
It's less more that less is more, though. I think.
In this one, I think.
I'd be interested to see if there's any extended scenes or deleted scenes of him that they might have cut. Right? I don't know.
I was gonna say, if you haven't seen Dream Scenario, that's a really fun Nicolas Cage one as well. Just putting that out there. It's like it's emotional and very kind of cool idea. Anyways, oops, this is the wrong one that I pressed. There we go. I hit the wrong button. There we go. So we're gonna. Yeah. All right. So any wrapping zappings? I don't know what that sentence means, but I'm there with it. So there we go.
I think I gave my final thoughts. What are your final thoughts on the film?
I agree. I think it's one of those films that it didn't change the shape of cinema, but I think it definitely had a huge impact in genre film, particularly in 2024. I think this is a film that will be on a lot of top 10 of the year lists. And I think it's definitely one of those ones that it will probably be on like a top 50 of maybe the 2020s, perhaps. It's a very strong film. I think Oz Perkins is such a cool director in terms of like the ideas that he pursues and the way that he crafts things and visually like as well. He's always kind of making things really interesting. So I think it's a film that, again, the more I sit with it, the more I digest it, the more I enjoy it. When I first saw it, I was like nitpicking at little things, but now that I'm like, well, what about this? And what about that? And this could be the thing. I'm really kind of more comfortable with its taste in my mouth, shall we say. That was a weird way to phrase that, but that's okay.
Love it.
I know. I was like, oh,
All
as
the
soon as I
taste of
said it, I
legs.
was like, oh.
On that note,
You're welcome.
okay, that's gonna do it for us. We're out of gas. That's okay.
That's
Like,
the sign that my tank is at empty. It's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, my brain just no.
Listen, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Thanks again for this has been a live broadcast for us. Takeover Tuesday or Hotstove from Hell on Oz Perkinson's Longlegs. Of course, get it if you have a chance, rent it, buy it on VOD or digital. Links in our comments or links are below on our YouTube channel. And of course, if you do have if you like collecting physical media, pick it up on 4K. Buy movies, support genre cinema, support indie films like this one that are actually quality. Because you'll help get more of them made. And of course, big thanks to our guest, Makeup Billy. Vic, thank you so much.
Thank you,
you're the best. We love you. And thank you for taking 2 hours out of your time, out of your day, out of your night. And yeah, see, like she has all this fancy stuff going on over there.
I can't do any of that.
I got nothing. I don't even have an on-air sign over here. I got like a lamp.
I just got the YMCA over here.
Yeah,
I got nothing.
But yes, and to our audience, please, if you want to check out masks galore, if you want a custom mask made, Makeup Billy is your hookup. So make sure you check her out on Instagram at Makeup Billy. And of course, Vic, you have your own YouTube channel as well. Please, we'll link that below. Subscribe to our channel, and while you're at it, head over to Vic's channel, Makeup Billy, and subscribe there as well. That's it for me. Any final words? No, we're out of here. Okay.
That's it.
It's like, please, for the love of God.
That's
my
it.
brain's crawling out my ear.
Stick around after we go off the air. I'm going to run the close out here, but thanks everyone again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on another episode of Takeover Tuesday, Hot Stove from Hell.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
And that does it for another episode of Black Fawn Distro's Takeover Tuesday. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, please remember to like, follow, share, and subscribe, and help us spread the word about the program and our incredible guests. If you're interested in grabbing some more information about Black Fawn distribution or want to check out our film titles and merchandise, you can find us online at blackfawndistribution.com. We'd also like to thank our sponsors: Wellington Brewery's Hellas Lager, Deadly Grounds Coffee, Twisted Teas, and of course, Black Fawn Distribution. Just a reminder, you can always catch Black Fawn Distro's Takeover Tuesday live on Facebook, YouTube, and our other social media platforms. Or pick up one of our retransmissions on any of the major streaming platforms. Until next time, I'm your host Benner from Black Fawn Distro, and we'll see you soon.